are live with another episode of the Keeg Talks. It is season 11, episode 15. Today, the Keeg is talking the new history of the DC Universe issue number 4. This is the final issue of the comic book miniseries that essentially lays down the groundwork for what the DC Universe continuity is in the comics. From the Big Bang to now, maybe a little bit beyond, this issue finishes it all up. The hardcover comes out in January, but we're here to talk about this final issue, talk about everything that they laid down, and, you know, maybe talk about, like, things to come and whatnot. I'm your host, Dimithri Pereira, and if you're watching us live, you are watching us on youtube.com/The Keeg Show, or maybe listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. We're all over the place. You're either watching us live or you're listening to us after the fact. Who is us? It's not just Dimithri, the host. We also got guest Jack, aka the Film Field. What's up, Jack?
Not too much. I'm excited to talk about this one. It's been a while going through all these, so very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this miniseries was special to me. Not only do I love continuity in general, but like DC Comics, right? And that added idea of what is DC continuity anymore? Like, people will ask me and I won't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
What is it? I don't know. Was this miniseries like a big deal to you?
100%. Yeah, I consider myself a big lore guy and just big cosmology guy. As much as I want to know the history of everything, I want to know how the DC universe works. And I think that this did a really good job of putting that all together. And not only that, in general, these types of books, when it comes to the history of whatever, is so important to me because I want to see how you handle years and years of retcons and changes and all these different things and put it together in a smooth way. And so these kinds of books, especially for me as like a big DC fan, this was incredibly important.
I'm trying to think of any other fandom, or like there's only a couple out there that could do or does need something like this to make sense of the whole timeline. One is Marvel, obviously, and one is DC. Like, those are like the two biggest ones. I don't think people realize, like, in this medium of comic books, like, DC has its own continuity, Marvel has its own continuity, and their continuity is unlike anything that's ever been made in, like, the history of the earth. Like, if you think about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Especially because, like, I'm thinking of others, like, fandoms where you would think about, all right, what's a beginning and end to this timeline? Like Star Wars relatively likes to keep things condensed, right? Like not really like reboots going on, right? It's like a pretty straightforward storyline, but you're like trying to put everything together from books, games, movies, right? So it's a hard task, but it's not a bunch of reboots and all these massive changes like what DC and Marvel goes through, right? Like it's just a whole different environment of what needs to be pieced together to look at a like nice, clear history. It's very different.
Also, Star Trek, up until very recently, just wanted to do one long storyline. Like, I get the expanded universe and everything, and like people jump in the chat. If anyone's out there watching, like, comment, subscribe, jump in the chat, let us know you're out there. Star Trek is a different, or Star Wars is a different beast. I'll get to Star Trek, but Star Wars is a different beast in the sense that, like, we're following the Skywalker saga, and, like, we get expanded universe stuff here and there and whatever, but, like, we understand in the context of Star Wars where it takes place. You don't really need someone to, like herd the sheep there. They're just kind of like, it is what it is. Star Trek, it's a little bit different now, but, like, yeah, maybe you need someone to, like, make sense of some of the timelines that goes on. Lord of the Rings might be the only thing.
I think about that one too. I think of ones that are just like, I don't follow this one that much, but I know of it very well. But like Five Nights at Freddy's, that's one where it's like started off clear. Here's these hints at its like timeline, and then tons of weird changes that nobody really understands. So that's one of those ones where it's like I can imagine that needing like a big book of just explanations of what's going on. But
yeah.
I can't think of much else outside of that.
But even Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't have 100 years of history with 20-ish stories a week, right? Like it's like 10 to 20 stories a week for 100 years across the multiverse. Like,
Yeah, and especially within the context of what comic books are and how much goes on. I mean, 1 year could go on in real time of comic books, and a dozen things could have changed massively. Like whether that's lore to a character, whether that's a reboot, whether that's the DC universe changing to an omniverse or a new Earth being here. Like so much changes on such a regular basis that it's. I don't blame people for struggling to keep up or asking where am I even supposed to start.
A lot of people though, and it sucks the way it is because not everybody is like us, but if they see some hard continuity, they peace out. Like
Yeah,
they're not putting up with DC continuity if, for example, they like the Batman with Robert Pattinson and they come to the Batman comics and suddenly Batman shooting Darkseid with a cosmic bullet. Like I don't know whether people are like, okay, I'm in, or the people are like, I'm gonna back up here, you know?
yeah, especially in my experience, like with people who are trying to get into comics, for them, it's all different avenues of like, oh, well, where am I supposed to start? Or, oh, I saw this one comic panel before. Like, can I just start with that one? That one looked cool. And it's like all these different questions where it's like, yeah, I guess you could start wherever. You might have like 100 questions, but you could, technically speaking. I mean, my girlfriend, her first Batman comic was Grant Morrison's Batman series, and that was the most confusing thing for her ever. But she loved it.
At least it starts off pretty like normal. When I say
Hmm.
normal, the way it starts
Yeah.
off with is Talia comes into town with Bruce's son, and then there are ninja man bats. But for the sake of comics, like, yeah, like it's normal. It's a normal start
Yeah.
for Morrison, and it's a normal start for Batman, and then it just
Right.
ramps up from there.
Exactly.
I this issue, this is issue 404, and this podcast episode for anyone out there watching, and or listening. Obviously, we're doing deep dives into this. This. I mean, we're going to be diving deep. But generally speaking, sometimes you jump into the deep end, and uh, there's a lot of amazing characters that DC has. This is DC trying to like put them all together and make sense of everything, so that if somebody comes up to me or somebody comes up to you and asks, well, what, how does Flashpoint fit into everything? Then we could just say, according to this issue, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting book for somebody to start off with if they're trying to learn this stuff because it both gives a good general summary of everything, but also is incredibly overwhelming to the point that it's like, I think this is as smooth as you could go about it because I think a little bit too much more information, you're getting to a point where we're like, all right, how's the pacing here? Are we gonna get through all this in 4 issues, right? And then a little bit less, and you're like, oh man, I feel like we didn't really tackle all of the history we should have, right? So this is like the best soft spot you could hit, and I think it was done pretty well, especially if you're trying to get someone to understand these things. It's the best way to do it.
Yeah. I would say that if anyone wants to really dive into this, this is our fourth episode on this specific topic. So start off with episode 1, 2, 3, and then get to New History DC Universe 4, and maybe it'll make a little bit more sense. Um, Quick question for you, and I don't know if I asked you this before. When you were first starting getting into comics, I'm assuming you deep dived into lore and all that. How did you learn all that? Because for me, when I was younger, I mentioned on maybe a past episode, I had the DK encyclopedias, and that's how I did it. And then I looked up online, like, and I went on message boards, and I just kind of like learned from there. This was like pre Wikipedia, but people had their own blogs and like like their own Wikipedias in a way. Like it wasn't they were editing it, and I learned as much as I could, and some of it was correct, and some of it I think is more fanon. Um, but that's how I got into it. Uh, was it the same for you? Like,
So for me, it was interesting because like I had already known Batman very well my whole life. Like that was someone where I had, as a little kid, like coloring books full of different villains. So I knew the Rogues Gallery. I knew like the Lego games. I knew the shows. Like I knew them generally well. So that you want to get into more stuff. So when it came to learning about comic books and stuff, it was like blog sites, YouTube videos. But weirdly enough, the big one for me that helped me to learn the most about DC was a game that wasn't really, it was a DC game, but not really one. It was a game of Scribblenauts Unmasked. And it's just a game that had weirdly so much DC characters with such deep cuts of lore that I just learned almost everything from that. It had bios of everybody, the most obscure characters I had no idea about. And that ended up being like a focal point for me learning all these characters, funny enough.
Yeah, people really like they sleep on the impact of tangential media when it comes to like these characters. A lot of people got introduced to characters through like Injustice, or
Yes,
like
definitely.
when I was a kid, like we had a lot. There was a lot of like trading cards, like cards of
Yeah,
everything, right? Not only Pokemon cards, but like DC had less cards, but they did have some. Marvel had a bunch, and like
yeah.
people may not have watched the one episode of the Hulk animated show where the Ghost Rider comes into play, right? Like, but they got that card with the flaming skull, and on the back it says 3 sentence bio, and that's all people needed to get really invested in the character.
Yeah, and it's especially interesting too because you see how much it builds up certain characters to be known by people who probably wouldn't know a lot about DC. I mean, I even think of just like the Justice League animated show, like specifically John Stewart as Green Lantern is somebody that people I know who don't care about superheroes at all can sometimes be like, "Oh, I know that guy. Yeah, he was in that show. Like I know him, right?" They some of them know him more than Hal, right? And then when it comes to like Wally West specifically, or like they think that Hawkgirl is a general main member of the Justice League of like the main seven, right? And I even think to like you said, Injustice. Weirdly enough, there's people I know that specifically know about like Doomsday or Solomon Grundy because they played like Injustice One, or they know Shazam because of that game, and they don't know anything else about comic books at all. And it's like that's the thing that sticks out. That's so interesting because it helps these characters become a little bit more known by that general audience in just such interesting ways.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's why like I wish there were more DC Lego sets,
Yes.
because when you get a little minifigure of some rando character, like then you get interested sometimes. Like you may not
Yeah.
know who Brainiac is, but when you buy the little Brainiac set, which I do have, I got a bunch of Legos behind me. I've yet to show off my full Lego collection, like online. I have a bunch.
You
Um,
have to. Yeah.
yeah. So I have the little Brainiac ship that's a skull with like tentacles, and like people are
Nice.
like, I don't know who Brainiac is, but I got this Lego set from my grandma, and then you're like, oh, this skull ship looks cool. What is this character? So
Oh yeah.
a lot of people getting introduced different ways. They don't really do cards anymore. Like cards aren't really like a big thing. But what is like mobile gaming. And so
Yes.
DC at least has, what's that one game that's out right now?
Are you talking about DC Legends? That I know that
Mm,
one people know some stuff from.
no,
Um,
there's that mobile game that they've been advertising it on like new Peacemaker episodes, where they're like, download the piece, like you can get the Peacemaker character in the
I
game.
I think I know what you're talking about. Is it like a weird? Because I think I know what you're talking about. I've seen a lot of advertisements for a very specific mobile game.
I
Is
forget what
it?
it's
It looks like
called.
it's yeah. Oh man,
It's called
I
Dark.
can.
It's like Dark Legion or like something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So like, sure, it's the free stuff that like can pop up on people's phones, and you can get like learn about new characters. So I'm excited for this hardcover to come out. Whatever I said, like January 18th or something that like that.
Mhm.
So that like maybe this is the book that you like you buy and you give it as a present. You know.
Yeah, a hundred
Um.
percent. And I think there's areas of this that are hard to understand, but it's the kind of hard to understand that doesn't make you confused
Yeah.
and want to back out. It's the kind that makes you want to go research and go to the rabbit holes.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where you're like, oh, I might go check that out later. Or it's like, oh, they're talking about the new 52. Oh, they're talking about Dr. Manhattan. Oh, well, now I know that's Doomsday Clock. Maybe I'll go check that out because that's really interesting. I want to know more about what happened there, right? Like it gives you good tunnels to go down.
Yeah. I mean, it also doesn't hurt that the art is amazing, and then they change the
Yeah.
artist every issue. Well, they have like 2 artists per issue, so like it's really changing every couple of pages. So like let's just say a kid got it as a present. Yeah. And it's fairly appropriate. Like I don't remember any sort of sex in
No, not
because
Not
it
at
doesn't
all.
play a part in the continuity, right?
No, a lot of these like panels and moments are just big pages of all of the characters or showcasing like Jace Fox Batman or like this era of the Titans and stuff like that. So even if it's for a kid to just kind of like recognize these symbols and brands and characters, it's a great thing to look at. You've got tons of different teams in this book, tons of different designs. It's even showcasing how Batman's design changed or they've got this new suit now. Like it's a fun thing to look at on an art level entirely too.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I'm just a big fan of these encyclopedias, but this is a little bit. It's doing a different thing than the like DC has an encyclopedia that came out and they like update it every like 3 years or so. But like the DK encyclopedias are good and like you could look up individual characters in their like individual histories, which is cool. I hope they come up with a new one that is up to date. But this is more about the timeline, and that I mean that's what we're tackling today. So we were talking last episode. We don't know how much they're going to fit in this issue because they finish it off with Final Crisis, and then we were like, or did they? Like, are they still going to go over Final Crisis? And they, I guess that was that in issue 3. They start off with Blackest Night.
Yeah, it was interesting because like you said, we talked about this and how much was going to get tackled. And the biggest thing for me was wondering, okay, you've got Blackest Night. Maybe they'll talk about Brightest Day because they went over Blackest Night vaguely, like they mentioned it in passing, and it was like, all right, are they saying that happened before Final Crisis, after? Right? What's the deal with
That
that? Are they
is
going to?
weird, right? They do mention
Yeah,
it, but then they're like, "Oh, it's to come," and then they mention Final Crisis,
and then they
and
mention it back to back with Brightest Day in this one too. So then they
yeah,
make a focal point of it. So I wonder if that had to do with them wanting to mention it, but then put emphasis on Brightest Day and explain this is how Martian Manhunter came back. Here's how Aquaman came back. Maybe it was about the emphasis on here are the characters that were revived, and it wasn't like a reboot in this instance. It was like they came back for a very specific reason. That's kind of where my brain goes to. But it's an interesting start for this one because I wondered, would they just kind of quickly go over those little moments and then focus entirely on the new 52 rebirth up to now, like Infinite Frontier? And it seemed to be the case there. And it even went faster by than I thought. Like every little era they went over went by way quicker than I thought they would.
I feel like out of all the issues, I got the least enjoyment out of this one, and
Mm-hmm.
that's because I think they were focusing on just getting the timeline, like mentioning every event that took place in the timeline, that they didn't expand on it even in a like little like inkling of what they did with issue number 1. They brought up the fact that there was a Justice Society Dark, which is a new concept, to and like to bring it up in issue 1 and then like for some writer to go utilize it elsewhere. Cool. But in this, I don't think they dropped anything new. They were just like, no, this is the next thing, this is the next thing, this is the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I'm at with it too. For me, like we talked about this before, where I think this was my least favorite of the four. And not to say it was bad, I think all four of these issues have been good. I've liked them all to differing amounts, but I do think that if one's in fourth place, this would be the one for me. And I think for many reasons, I think for one, like you said, there wasn't a lot of new concepts here. And it's not to say that that's the main thing I'm looking for, but when you're talking about so much time that they're covering here, especially during eras where there is confusion, especially when it came to the new 52 and such aggressive changes to certain characters, I wondered if maybe there would be certain avenues here where they took a spin and said, hey, we actually have a really cool way to connect, this to this. Let's do that. Or, hey, I actually have like a little clever way of handling this little weird blip in canon or whatever it may be. And it's not even like they ignored that. It's almost like they ignored a lot of chunks of those eras in general. Like the new 52, I think they covered that for like 7 pages, something like that. Like it was very quick. And I'm not a big new 52 fan, but I thought at the very least we'd get understanding in deeper explanation of that era for what was a lot of big change. And it was kind of just like some people were different. Anyways, let's move on. So that was like a wow, we're moving pretty fast through these so far.
Yeah. I mean, so I'll be honest, the way I read this was they were ashamed of the new 52,
Yeah.
and and by the way, keep in mind this isn't all like we've talked about this. This isn't all just Mark Wade and his writing choices. He is writing his knowledge, and then DC is telling him like whatever. So from what we've gathered in our previous podcast episodes is that like his goal here wasn't to negate anything, to wipe things off the map. His thing was to say all parts of the map are on the map, but this is the path like that it goes, right? Like
Yeah.
the new 52 happened. Like he doesn't go back and say, "Oh, in this new thing, the new 52 never happened." It did, but what does it mean? There's some like key words with it. They call it cosmically unstable, and they mean it
Yeah.
in the story, but I also think it's a meta joke.
I think so too. And especially because there's a lot of elements of the way they talk about it where it's like they talk about the new 52 and those changes. Like they focus on like Green Arrow too. And like they show little moments there where it feels like they're very specifically saying, like, hey, I get it. Everyone was really weird during this time. We need to emphasize they were not themselves. Like it felt like that,
Yeah.
especially because it's like because the first thing I always think of when I think of the new 52 is how different Green Arrow was for that. And for him to be right there, I'm like, okay, yeah, it feels like we're being very clear with the message here. So it's one of those things where, like, you're right. The wording is so specific about the fact that it's like, this is cosmically unstable. And even the way that they talk about, like, Wonder Woman talking to the hands to clean up what Dr. Manhattan was trying to do, like, there's a lot of emphasis on unstable timeline slash multiverse.
That it wasn't meant to be, that it isn't true, that it
Yeah,
was a mistake. So
right.
again, in the continuity, it was a mistake, and then it just seems like yeah, it doesn't. Here's a question: was Mark Waid writing anything for DC in the New 52? I don't think so.
I
I think
don't I don't think so either.
I think the New 52 goes against everything that Mark Waid is for.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. 100%. And I wonder, like, especially because the new 52 and with how Rebirth handled things post new 52, it very much felt, even just with the Rebirth era, it was like, we're sorry. Here's the cleanup. Here's Wally. Here's all this other stuff. Here's clarity. Here's, this history reborn. Right. So it already feels like even within narrative of the universe, we already have all these explanations about like why these reboots happen, right? There was an emphasis in universe to be like, that was weird, that was off, that was not normal. And so for Mark Wade to double down on that and be like, yeah, everyone knows this was wrong and weird and awkward. Barry makes it very clear something was off in the universe. I like that. I think it actually works pretty well, just from the lens of like, I didn't love the new 52 whatsoever, but also I think it just kind of works in the way that like Doomsday Clock handled it, Dr. Manhattan talking about this kind of stuff, the way they handle Flashpoint and all this stuff. It works in a way to me.
Yeah. Um when they I'm so we got Brightest Day, they talk about it. Oh, okay. So then they talk about like, yeah, Bruce Wayne was believed dead. There's the battle for the cowl. Then Barry says he pulled the Speed Force inside him, and I'm quoting this. He says, "I made the most horrific mistake imaginable." Um, Now, is he talking about the Flashpoint? Yeah, I guess he's talking about the shocking ripple effects of this historical Flashpoint, rewriting nearly every corner of reality. Now, he says close allies were total strangers. So this is a picture, and it was playing. If I can bring it up here, if I can, I'm gonna try to see if I can pull this slide up. Where is it? It's page 2. Anyway, it. I'm gonna pause it there so anyone watching can see it. It's Dr. Manhattan's hand, and he's holding like there's like 3 images. One is Green Arrow and Black Canary. The other one is the new, at the time, the new 52 Lobo, and then it was like the new 52 Titans, which we've talked about on previous episodes. Like most of them weren't even the original characters, like Superboy and Kid Flash, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so he mentions close allies were total strangers, imposters attempted to replace us, and entire legacies were forgotten. So I feel like if you read it, you would see it as each one corresponds with one image. But if you look at it all, you could take it as all 3 apply to all 3 images, in the sense that everybody's strangers, everybody's an imposter, legacies were forgotten for everyone.
100%, and especially because, like you said, it's already enough that it feels like the phrasing is about like, "Hey, I went back and I made this mistake," right? Flashpoint talking about that all, but especially like we talk about post New 52 and the way that DC looks back at the New 52 with the Rebirth era and the way that Mark Waid's talking about it now and what changed and what is the status quo now. Like it is constantly looked back at as like, yeah, people weren't themselves. Like it went from being this, here's this new DC, new modern DC to like everything about that was wrong. Here's why. Here's the culprit. Here's Dr. Manhattan's, reason for doing it. Like it became this very specific message of like, this was a weird time and things were off. And I think for that, like, aspect of not only the consequences of what Flashpoint was to be like, oh, I changed the timeline, right? Like obviously Thomas Wayne Batman, all this stuff. Not only that, but him basically permanently ruining everything, even when he fixes it. Like those regrets exist because then his entire introduction to Wally again after all the New 52 and knowing how many memories were lost and the way that everything was investigated with the button and everything to do with Doomsday Clock, all of these pieces in narrative all give this emphasis of this is clearly a timeline that they look back at as if you're a reader and you're going to read this, we want you to know things are off, things are weird, right? Like when you're reading this isn't who Green Arrow will be forever. This is something's off, this is different, almost as if like it's kind of like if you pretended that like the absolute universe was the main universe and then I don't know, we're like actually this is supposed to be different, this is weird, things are off.
Which is funny that you mentioned that because I used to bring it up all the time when I used to talk about New 52, and the reason I disliked it is because if we're looking at the real, like our real world timeline, in the year 2000 or 2001, Ultimate Spider-Man came out from Marvel, and that was the first one. And they didn't really, I don't think when they first introduced him, they were planning on a whole Ultimate Marvel line, but they did Ultimate Spider-Man, then they did Ultimate X-Men, they did the Ultimates, they did all that, right? And they created the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And the cool thing about the Ultimate Marvel Universe is it wasn't a reboot of the 616 Marvel Universe, it was running at the same time. And they kept teasing that the two universes would meet. And even when they teased it, turns out they didn't. And like it was on rare occasion that anything crossed over between the 616 and the regular Ultimate Marvel Universe. Handful of occasions. But for the most part, they kept them separate and there were separate timelines. They got to experiment with one and keep the other one pretty solid, right?
Yeah.
And for better or for worse, and it became for worse, Ultimate Marvel got to play around with ideas that later got merged kind of into the 616 and then came out in the MCU. A lot of people don't realize that the MCU, especially in those early years, are based more on the Ultimate Marvel universe than they are on 616. Like the whole
Right.
idea of the Avengers coming out of Shield and the Avengers initiative, that is very Ultimates.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I think so much of the New 52, when you look back at it through the lens of like, this was a place, this was a time where things were off, and you know that they're going to go back to status quo, right? When you think about it through that lens and you think about how,
I
oh,
didn't know they
everything's
would go
so
back to the status quo.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when you get to look back with that clarity, it makes it not necessarily like a better era, but it makes it an era with an actual purpose. Where I go, I'm interested to see why these things change and what it means for the future. Then you get into things like the button, you get into things like Doomsday Clock, and all this clarity. Wally comes back, his interaction with the Titans, making them remember him. Right then, those elements get interesting. But when you're in the moment and you don't know, and this is presented as the new era of DC, this is what it is. It's kind of like, okay, I feel like this would be better if this was a universe at the same time as the one we know and love, right?
Right.
That's when you start feeling that way.
Right. So, for instance, like back when Ultimate Marvel started, people had been talking, right when Ultimate Marvel kicked off, people were like, this is my idea for Ultimate DC. Like, let's do Ultimate
Yeah.
DC. Wouldn't it be cool if DC had DC and Ultimate DC? And DC did not do it at all. And there would be some times where they would try out new, like, kind of ideas, kind of like that, like All Star or Earth One. Like,
Right.
those were their ideas of, like,
Earth one's the closest. Yeah.
yeah, they were, well, All-Star Batman was also like not in continuity,
Yeah.
and it was kind of like, okay. Um, and then they did Earth One, which was supposed to be like a different thing, but then that didn't work out. So they were throwing things at the wall, seeing what sticks. And then they did New 52, which I thought was like the worst of both worlds in a way. Like they
Yeah.
didn't go far enough to make it Ultimate DC, but they didn't stick to the original plan. So they were in
Yeah.
this middle of ground of like, okay,
Yeah, and it is so interesting too because it's just kind of like, do you think that this is the future of what these characters should be and what like for this to be the foundation of whatever future they saw was always so mind-boggling to me where it's like this is like a running on the side alternate universe very interesting to me, right? This is like a here's a timeline where things have gone wrong, things are going to go back to the status quo, but for the time being we want you wondering what's going on, whatever. That's interesting to me. For that to be the foundation of what they consider to be, this is what DC will be going forward, is a head scratcher very aggressively for me, where it's like, really? This is what you think that is? And this is how you want new readers to come into this, all this? It's just, that never works for me.
you know what this is more comparable to, the New 52? Are you familiar with Star Trek stuff?
Slightly, not too much though.
It's the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, because they have you seen the first one? At least the first one?
I believe so. Which is it just called Star Trek? Is it like
Yeah.
2009 or something? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So it starts off with a ship from the future comes into the past and essentially kills the Kelvin, like blows up the Kelvin, which was alive in the original timeline. Now it's like it sets an alternate timeline. So it becomes what's called the Kelvin timeline. And for a long time, that was the only Star Trek content that Star Trek fans could watch or digest. Like it was only the Kelvin movies. There wasn't any TV shows at that time. And so because of that, Star Trek, like a lot of longtime Star Trek fans were mad. They were like, we're doing a restart. It's an alternate timeline. And although I like the movies, those movies got me into Star Trek. So kind of like some people got into DC through the New 52.
Yeah.
I got into it through the Kelvin timeline. People were very, very upset. But New 52 is even worse. New 52 would be like if they did a sequel series to Star Trek Deep Space Nine that kept the same continuity as Deep Space Nine, but then they put it in the Kelvin timeline where they're like, that all happened the same way, except it is merged in with this alternate timeline. That's what the New 52 was. Let's do Deep Space Nine and Voyager. They're continuing on. Kelvin is an alternate timeline, but also crossing into them.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because I think so much about like we talked about the way that now in context knowing everything years later the way that DC both on just like a real life level but also in narrative story level looks back at the New 52. It's constantly addresses this like problem. It's like something was wrong at this time. And I think it's interesting now that you see the way that the absolute universe is coming together, and even just like the smallest like pieces of ideas that are in that universe, it feels like the correction of what that was. It feels like the correction of here's what it should be. Here's what it should be as its own isolated universe with a reason for why it exists, all this stuff. And it invites changes to happen. It invites interesting changes. Not only that, but just better changes, just better creative choices.
Yeah. It's kind of like how I can appreciate Man of Steel, the movie, more as like a multiversal story. Like it's a different universe in the multiverse. And you could argue that like we should pay that like to all adaptations of anything, right? Like Cape Crusader, for instance, the Batman cartoon came out that took place in the past. Like you can have a female Oswald Cobblepot. That's fine because it's an alternate universe. Like of course, like why can't you? You can do whatever you want.
And that emphasis on alternate universe or alternate timeline allows people to be so much more open-minded and really interested in the alternate ideas, because then it turns away from being like, oh, you're changing everything about the main line of what I know and love, and it turns into, oh, if we're already on the topic of doing these cool changes, what if you have this? People are already obsessed with what is this absolute Batman villain going to look like? What's this one going to look like? If you just came in guns blazing and changed regular designs of the mainline characters, people would just be like, like, what's going on? Like, what? Like the designs worked for so long. Why are you doing this? And now instead you get people loving these redesigns, going, what's next? Oh, what if you borrowed from this instead? What does this absolute hero look like?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's digging the Absolute Universe because we get the DC universe and the Absolute DC universe. If
Yes,
the DC universe rebooted into the Absolute DC universe, I would be done with DC Comics. I
a
don't
hundred
care how
percent.
good they are. Batman would not be my number one Batman. Like Absolute Batman, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah,
Absolute Superman does not do it for me without the idea that in another universe, the Superman is out there being, truth, justice, and in a brave new world or whatever the new slogan is. Like,
yeah. And so much of what makes these characters work in the absolute universe is the fact that we already understand and know what is the mainline version, right? So when you see the twist and you see the change, it affects you because you know what the mainline version is, right? So when you think about what Alfred means to the main universe and what that looks like in that relationship, when you see that flipped on its head, you're way more intrigued by it because you know what the regular version of that is, right? Like for me, like I think Absolute Flash and Absolute Green Lantern are really intriguing to me because of the difference of those concepts, the way that they're handling Flash's powers, the way that they're handling the emotional light spectrum, right? Like these are really interesting ideas. But if you just came in guns blazing and changed everything into that, I would be immediately not interested. I would not be a Green Lantern fan anymore. Like that completely disrupts it to me.
yeah,
Having it be separate and having it have the reflection of what the actual status quo is so much more fun and so much better for both titles.
I think what it is like, look, before like you just got to know yourself. Like you got to know
Yeah.
yourself. You got to know the people around you. Like you can't put a mirror up to anything if you don't know like what that object is. Like who cares about seeing it
Yeah.
in reverse if you don't know what it is going forward, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So having that difference, that gets people excited, right? If
Yeah.
you're just given a new 52 where there's Bartor Flash now, I don't know if I'm ever going to see Wally West again. I don't know if I'm going to see Impulse, right? Like I don't need to be hit with that. Instead, you treat that as an alternate universe. I am way more bought in. I'm way more bought into the what ifs.
I and I mean we'll move on, but like I cannot get over how much I dislike the new 52.
Fair.
I can't, and also not only were they just choices I didn't like, the continuity made no sense. So
Absolutely not.
it doesn't make, even if they, at least the absolute DC universe like makes sense with the continuity. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
So it's a nice correction of mistakes and taking obvious concepts that they clearly liked and applying it to a way better general thing.
Yeah,
Having this side universe that works in all these different ways and allowing them to be outside of the box. So I appreciate that.
yeah. So with this issue, we get New 52 where they're kind of they apologize for it essentially in less words, but then they mention
Yeah.
that like, hey, but there were like some cool things, there were some positive things. They bring up Batgirl resuming her Barbara Gordon resuming her career as Batgirl. They mentioned Justice League Dark, which both were pretty acclaimed series at the time. Like so it's saying like, hey, not everything was that bad. Like
Yeah.
you got these cool stories. They reinvigorated the Suicide Squad.
Mhm.
Because truth be told, before the New 52, I'm trying to think of the last time they had the Suicide Squad.
The new 52 was a weird area where like I think the Suicide Squad became more popular
Yeah,
because it was a weird
because they put
time where it's like
Harley on it. That's who. Because Harley
yes.
was not on the team until New 52.
Yeah, exactly. And then also especially brought in the like I don't know how frequently Deathstroke was on the Suicide Squad before then,
He
but
wasn't
I
at all.
noticed okay, yeah, because then after that, that became a big theme of like Deathstroke and Deadshot both on the Suicide Squad. Like out of nowhere, that's when I would see people be like, "Oh, if there's a Suicide Squad movie, I want insert this actor playing Deathstroke." I'm like, "When is he on the Suicide Squad?"
Yeah,
But wait, what? Like like that became a norm. Same thing with Harley Quinn.
yeah. And I mean, I'm not complaining about the Secret Six run. Like again, according to this issue, they're saying like, hey, remember the good times? We had some
Yeah,
good times, right?
yeah, some good moments out there. It wasn't all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they bring in, the fact that like Grant Morrison, their Court of Owls stuff. Wait, that's no, that's Zack. Is that Zack Snyder?
Scott Snyder. That's
Oh,
Scott Snyder. Yeah.
Scott Snyder. I always mix
Yeah.
up the Snyders. Scott Snyder. Yeah. So they bring up the Court of Owls, the Talons. They bring up Red Hood and the Outlaws. Some
Mhm.
people not a fan of that, but you
Yeah.
know,
And interestingly enough, I don't know if this was supposed to specifically establish this as the core team in the first place, but they like included all of the outlaw characters. Like they specific because it was originally Red Hood, Starfire, and Arsenal. And then with the next series that went into Rebirth, it was Bizarro and Artemis. And then like you had like Creeper show up kind of on the team later and stuff like that. But it seems like they just meshed them all to just be like, this was the team from the get-go. I
they
don't
do
know
that
if
a
that was
lot. They do that a lot with
yeah.
some other teams. Like, um, I don't know whether Shade the Changing Man was on the starting lineup of Justice League Dark,
Yeah,
or
me
even at
neither.
all. I don't remember because maybe I didn't read all of Justice League Dark. But the point being is like, was Shade the Changing Man on that team, or is that a retcon in by Wade?
Yeah, I keep juggling between is this supposed to be a retcon of the timeline of who's on the team when and where, or is it just like a general summary of like these are the people that were on it through the course of this era, right? Like,
I,
is that what they mean?
I think
Because
that's
even
what they
then,
mean.
yeah, because even then it's like technically Bizarro and Artemis are like Rebirth era, but it's like I guess it makes sense to group them because there's not a wider history of Red Hood and the Outlaws beyond that like era, those two eras specifically. So I think that's probably what they're doing. Yeah,
Um, okay, Shade the Changing Man was on the Justice League Dark team, but no,
I just don't
Shade,
remember it.
Yeah, Shade the Changing Man, not to be confused with the Shade.
Right.
But
Interesting.
okay,
I don't remember him that clearly. Interesting.
I also like I don't care anything about Shade the Changing Man, but like
Yeah.
that's a deep cut DC lore. Like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
it is what it is. Oh, and then they bring up Roy, Red Arrow. Emiko Queen becomes Red Arrow, and it doesn't really bring up Roy Harper being dead, right?
No, I don't think
At
so.
all
It's
in
just
this issue.
no, I don't think so. I don't think they mention him being dead. They just make a focus on like certain elements of Rebirth in New 52. That's another thing too. It doesn't feel like they're only skipping over certain parts of New 52. Specifically with Rebirth too, it's like a very fast like briefly skipping over these things. Like it feels like very fast paced in the Rebirth section of all this stuff.
Yeah. Then I mean they bring up the Earth 3 crime syndicate stuff, the Forever Evil, right?
Yeah.
Crossover event. You know what they don't bring up, and I don't think that they
They don't
wasn't
bring up Trinity War. I
I
don't
was
hear
about to
them
say
bring
they
up.
don't bring up Trinity
Yeah.
War.
Yeah, I thought they were going to because that's like it's a decently big moment, you know what I mean? So I was a bit surprised that wasn't mentioned whatsoever. Not even Pandora. Actually, wait, was Pandora mentioned? I don't know. I think Pandora might have been mentioned. I could be wrong.
In issue
Uh,
3.
if Pandora wasn't mentioned in this, the thing I might be thinking of is Joshua Williamson with uh Justice League, it was a Justice League Incarnate. That series he did leading up to Dark Crisis, he had a big like just breakdown of all the big events that happened. I wonder if that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Because yeah, was there a Pandora mention maybe?
No. Now I'm
Not
like
it.
I'm flipping through it and like no. Um
Interesting.
Pandora's
So
not
just
mentioned at all.
that's the that's one of those things where it's like, hey, maybe you don't love it, but that feels like a bit of an important moment.
I think the point how did Pandora die? Did she wipe herself from the timeline? Like did however she
Uh,
die do that maybe? So
Maybe
technically she
something
never
like that.
existed in the first place?
That's the only thing I can think of, or maybe like there's like certain elements of like certain events, I guess, that they don't really fully tackle, even during like the Infinite Frontier era and that kind of stuff. So maybe there's just certain elements of things where they're like, maybe we can just include this at the end, or like include this in a reading order section of just if you want to check it out yourself. Like maybe it was just a we don't have time to go over this part.
Hey, there wasn't any footnotes section in this, was there?
Yeah, there wasn't for this one. I think I was listening to some people talk about it. I think some people said that there will be, for the hardcover. I don't know if that's fully true. I could be wrong there, but I think some people said that that would be the case.
I'm sure
But
they struggle to get this out, like,
yeah,
on time, because not only is it a lot of writing, it's a lot of art, and it's great art too, because like you can see on some of this like artwork that like, oh shit, it's like pretty detailed stuff.
yeah, and it's constant teams, it's constant like big groups of people. Like it's a lot going
You
on these
can't phone it
pages.
in on some of this stuff because even on the team shots, they're all like,
Detailed, they're pretty detailed.
yeah, and they're all pretty dynamic. I'm looking at like
Yeah,
the way some of the, and I mean I'll throw this up, but like, for anyone watching us, if you're watching us, you're watching us live, youtube.com/the Keeg Show, or you listen to the podcast. But either way, we're putting up that cover, in case anybody is watching us on YouTube. So yeah, I mean they're not phoning in on this artwork. So also, I think this needed to come out before DCKO was over, and I think,
yeah.
and you can tell at the end of this issue, they bring up that Hush comes back and that, oh, things have changed, and it's like, Hush 2 is so delayed that there are technically two Batman series going on at the same time. They started the new run of Batman before the old run finished. That's how
Yeah.
delayed Hush is, which I find in my heart of hearts so hilarious.
Yeah, it's to the point where I would forget at points where I'm like, did that wrap up or no? I've been getting my girlfriend into these comments and she's like, should I read Hush 2? Like, is that over? And I'm like, is it over? No, it is not over. And she's like, but Matt Fraction started. And I'm like, you're just as confused as I am. Like, yeah, that's just where we're at right now with how delayed that is. I mean, like, even for this book, I have no idea what the context of the end of that story is because we're not going to know for a long time.
But we've had like literally the Red Hood series that like came out and they got retracted takes place after Hush 2.
Yeah.
And Batman the New Run takes place after Hush 2. So all these characters, I mean, in DCKO, Joker
Yeah.
is alive. So what does Hush 2 change? Also, it'd be one thing if Hush 2 was good,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
not.
Exactly.
And I'm so
No,
sorry, but it's not.
not at all. Not at all. And that's why I was so happy to get Fraction to kind of breathe new life into this because that was a the dark era is the wrong word. It's not a thing for me where it's like, oh God, it's so terrible. But it's the kind of thing where it's like, this is so tacked on. This doesn't feel like someone really thought about this and had a genuine good idea for Hush 2. This feels like we've got to throw Hush out there, think of something. You know what I mean? And I just was not a fan whatsoever.
Illuminate something for me. I don't know if you've thought about this. Maybe they had a contractual thing with Jeff Loeb because Jeff Loeb came back for two sequels, which was the last Halloween, which is the Long
Right.
Halloween's third, like the trilogy, finishing off the trilogy, and then also Hush 2, which
Right.
is essentially Jeff Loeb's big two hits, right? Like Long Halloween and Hush. Sure, I don't know if there's a third one that Jeff Loeb's writing, but like, I
That's
don't
a
like. Was it contractual? Why did they bring? Why did they do it?
that's a good point. I wonder if it felt like a because I mean it happened right after Zdarsky's run, right? Like it went from Zdarsky to Hush,
Yeah,
basically, if you're going, yeah. So I wonder if after that it felt like a, hey, we're already doing like last Halloween's, we're doing all this other stuff with him. Might as well give him a shot at this. Maybe it was like a, hey, I have an idea and it wasn't a very great idea. It felt very commercial. It felt very advertising to do this. Like it didn't feel like a new run with a new writer or hey, we love this writer. We want him to come back. He had this great idea for a run. It felt very much like please read this book right now. Just take this. Please read it. Like it felt so commercial to me where I was like, I don't want to read this. This doesn't feel like you actually were passionate about writing a new Hush story.
yeah, and like it's cool that Jim Lee came back, but also at the same time, like I don't know, I didn't need it. Like Jim
No,
Lee's
not at
art
all.
is amazing, but also like let's have a good story too. Is that I don't
Yeah.
know if that's so much to ask. Also, if it's impacting things, sure, but also like I pretty much I just assumed they wanted to like make a hardcover for this, like, but the hardcover is going to come out even later. I looked it up, and the final issue of Batman Hush comes out end of January.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I mean, and by that point, we're going to be neck deep in DCKO, and it's just kind
Yeah,
of like, what are we doing? It's
DCKO finishes
strange.
around that point. Also, Batman, Matt Fraction's Batman's probably on issue 6 at that point. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
you're a good chunk of ways into Fractions Batman, and Fractions Batman's very clearly something that feels like it's going to be around for a while. That's like the way it feels to me. Like this is clearly a great new era of Batman, and for that to just be kind of coming out on the side, it's just like this messy.
I'd be surprised if Matt Fraction doesn't reach, let's just say 2 years, 24 issues. I would be surprised if
Yeah,
Matt Fraction doesn't reach that far. And then I, I would, the only point after that that I would be surprised is if he lasts more than 5 years. But I could see him on this title 2 to 5 years. Tom King wrote Batman for about 5 years, right?
yeah. I could see it because especially with the way Fractions writing it, it's very almost like episodic in the way that you see like Batman the Animated Series be these very individual stories. And I think that that format is really strong if you want to keep readers' attention and keep things going because every storyline feels like a lot of the times it's like you're halfway through some random story point and you're like, all right, this is like part 6. All right, I clearly have to go back. Like, I love that it's in this episodic format where I'm like, that's going to be something I see lasting for a long time. And
Right.
especially with how well it's written.
Right. Like DC wants a title where it's not like waiting for the bus for an hour to catch your bus, but rather a bus that comes by every 10 minutes. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to wait 6 issues to hop back on the Batman train. You could hop in on any issue. That's a pretty good format for a the arguably the flagship character of DC Comics.
Yeah.
Like if
It,
anyone's like, when should I get into Batman? You're like, now.
yeah, no, I've said that before too, and people are like, "Oh, we're only really early into this run," but I'm like, this is such an easy run to get into. Like, if you're just trying to start off, all you don't need to know anything about like the relevance of like Batman and Killer Croc. Just get right into that story. Boom, you're in immediately. Next issue, getting in with Tim Drake and all that. Like, all these are things that I think you could just even skip around if you wanted to, and
Yeah.
pick which story interests you because it gives you these chances to be like, oh, here's a story about Grundy. Here's a story about Firefly. Here's a story about this villain, or here's a new one. Like it's so well formatted in a way to allow for such a variety of stories without feeling like we're on a storyline that's taken a few months now that someone's not interested in. It's like, nope, we're moving to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Like it's the perfect way for somebody to get into this.
Yeah. I uh I can't express how much I loved issue number 2. Batman number 2
Yeah.
was so good.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to this, but like it's funny that all of DC continuity is related, right? Like as we
Yeah.
go through this, um, do you know how? So in the events of Forever Evil, they quote unquote kill. They release Dick Grayson's identity to the world, then they kill him. Then, as issue number 4 of New History of the DC Universe is talking about, he goes undercover as an agent of Spiral. And then it mentions that satellites erase the earlier identity revelation. I don't remember what happens there. Do you know how
I don't
he gets his identity back?
I don't remember much at all there. I just kind of assumed that was generally how it went because I'm trying to think of if there would be some kind of big retcon here and what would that would be for. So I don't know off the top of my head really because that was a while ago. I can't remember the last time I really read the Agent Dick Grayson stuff.
I Yeah, I'm trying to like look it up and like try to figure it out, but it is what it is. You know what I thought was interesting because of this idea that Wade is trying to create this cohesive universe and not trying to overwrite anything. The way they word Ace West, Wallace West, the way they word that does him a good service where they don't mention that pre Flashpoint he didn't exist.
Yeah.
The way they mention him is that essentially he always existed. So the words, I'm going to read it out. Wallace Daniel Ace West, Iris West's youngest nephew, not Iris West's new nephew, It's like Iris West's youngest nephew was gifted unstable super speed by his future self that was later cemented by a Speed Force storm caused by an enemy of mine. Convoluted, but whatever. I took him under my wing and he became the new Kid Flash. So, although it mentions that Barry doesn't remember Wally, it doesn't make it so that he's the first Kid Flash, Ace, and it doesn't make it that Ace is new to this universe.
Yeah, it's an interesting one too, because like we talked about, everything with the way that Wade is doing this is intentional. And we had a lot of questions about the way that the reboots would be addressed. Would it just be addressed as like this thing that's always existed because it's now rebooted, or are they going to address the specific moment things were rebooted when things change? And the answer to that is that they did do that. We saw the events change. We see the obvious statement about the new 52 and things are different, right? So this is another one of those instances where if they wanted to clarify that someone like Wallace West was new because of the new 52, they would have done it, right? They would have done that. Like they felt the need to clarify with things like Green Arrow. They talked about the Suicide Squad. You would have thought that that would have been something that's talked about and acknowledged to be, oh, things changed and new people arrived. And they would probably mention Wallace West. But here they don't do that. They just address it as like, nope, Wally the first, then he arrives. So it's interesting to basically kind of retcon this specifically in the sense of like, yeah, the new 52 happened, but the way we want to address this is that we're retconning this so that like Wallace West has always existed, and that has nothing to do with Flashpoint and New 52,
As
it
far
seems.
as they know, as far like we know something, right? And we talked about this
Yeah.
for issue 3, I think, is the idea that Crisis in our knowledge of DC Comics continuity, Crisis on Infinite Earths rebooted the timeline, but in the character's point of view, Crisis was just an event that happened to other universes, and their universe stays like smooth.
Yeah.
Even though we know that their universe changed, in their point of view, their universe kept going, right? That was
Right.
just an event that killed Barry Allen, that killed Kara Zor-El, and that was it.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting choice here too, because this could have just easily been one of those things where they just address it with the group of other stuff of being like, yeah, New 52 happened, things changed, because they've already made a statement to say that we are going to acknowledge these reboots and these timeline changes and cosmic instability, right? For them to not make Wallace part of that is interesting to me, because it's a choice to change that into a retcon, right? Because they could have just retconned elements of the new 52. They, if Wade truly wanted to, certain elements he could have been like, Green Arrow was always the same. He was always normal, right? Like they could have done that, but for that to be the only case here with Wallace is interesting to me. I don't know why specifically. Maybe it's just an element of, maybe that's what editorial wanted. Maybe they wanted that idea of Wallace and Wally to be a lot more smooth than it originally was. I'm not sure, because they still felt the need to talk about Wally coming back, right, and all that.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting choice. It's very deliberate.
I think they don't want to say that Wallace was a mistake, because they do mention, mistakes, right? But then
Yeah.
you also remember the good times. And like, I think they're trying to say that, like, look, I don't care. I don't care what you say. I don't need a paternity test. That is my boy. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I feel like
Yeah.
it's like I do not care what you have to say. You could say that, and I could or could not believe you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, because that's my boy, no matter what. Which I think is cool, especially
Yeah.
for a character like that where they could have chucked him away.
Yeah, I fully agree, because I think that especially with Wallace, he was a character that you like to see evolve too, like him getting the entire like Kid Flash mantle himself, getting the yellow suit, right? Like that was such a big moment that it was enough for that to be influential in the Flash TV show, right? Like that, he was a big enough
It's
character for
the
that
other
to
way
be
around.
important.
It's the other
Oh
way
yeah.
around.
Oh
So, well, kind of the other way around. The reason Ace or Wallace, because he only goes at Ace when Wally came back, but Wallace West became a character because on the show Iris West was black. Before that point in comics, Iris West was not black. So then they knew that if they're going to bring in Iris's nephew, they're going to have to make him black. That being said, in the show, he's her brother, not her nephew,
right.
right? And so they do a whole thing, and so I think in my memory, the Flash show made the Wests black. Then the
Yeah,
comics were like, we're gonna bring in the New 52, bring in uh um Kid Flash, and I think they might have planned it in the show, but the comics came first, and then the show came. So
that's
you know,
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting, especially because like I was saying, like I think that there's so much of making, like you said, Wallace not a mistake that is important because I think, they do make the clarification of like, yeah, well, not all of it was bad, right? Batgirl and all this stuff. Like there was good moments, but for them to specifically go out of their way to retcon it that this was a normal part of Flash history and that he's always been around is a very nice and deliberate moment to just like kind of wash away all of the hey, these things change, but here's the good, here's the bad. It's like none of that with this. He was just around. Like it's like making that not only just he's not a mistake, but it takes all the like messiness out of the equation. It turns this into not a cosmic timeline thing. He's just one of the Flashes. He's just one of them. And I think that's a good choice. I think it's a good choice because, especially for somebody that's learning all of this, I think that's a character that I would rather not be so complicated. I think that's a character I would rather just fit into the timeline of, Wally and now Wallace. Like, I would rather that just feel as smooth as I've always just kind of headcanoned it, anyways.
yeah, yeah. Uh, I thought it was cool of them to stick with that. They bring up the bat wings, which I don't really care for, but whatever.
Yeah.
They bring up Signal and We Are Robin. I think they're just trying to say that like all that stuff was still in continuity.
Yeah.
They bring up the new Doctor Fate. Khalid.
Yeah.
They bring up Grail. So and that
Hmm.
makes sense because Grail was in the most recent Grail is in the Tom King run of Wonder Woman. So you know,
Hmm.
we've seen Grail fairly recently. Um,
Right.
uh, they bring up Darkseid getting killed or kind of or whatever. Uh, yeah, they slayed Darkseid again. I don't remember this because I wasn't paying attention to Wonder Woman at that time. But like Grail slays Darkseid, I guess.
Yeah, was that part of Dark Side War, right? I think
Oh,
with
probably
the
yeah.
anti-monitor. Yeah, I think that was all to do with Dark Side War and her raising the anti-monitor and all that stuff. Because then it leads right into all the stuff about like, Jessica getting Crime Syndicate, Hal Jordan's ring and all that stuff. Because that all happens like right after Dark Side War.
I thought it happens right after Forever Evil.
I think. Well, actually, I think she turns into a Green Lantern at the end of Dark Side War. Like she gets the ring, I think, after Forever Evil, but
Mm,
she turns into a Green Lantern officially, like all normal. After Dark Side
okay.
War. Yeah.
Um, so after that, then they bring up the fact that Wally West is back, right? They have that whole hugging scene,
Hmm.
which I thought was really cool because that was like my first inkling that like, oh, DC is trying to bring back the things that we lost in New 52. You know,
Yeah.
Wally West teams back up with the Titans, that sort of thing. Were you gonna say something?
I was gonna say, it's funny enough, like for me, when I first got deep into comic books, like because I'd always been a comic book fan, but when I was first starting to really read it, like on a regular basis with what was releasing, Rebirth is where I was fully starting to get into it because I was into the New 52. I had tons of the Jeff Johns Justice League books, but I had read a lot of that as they had already been coming out. So my first start was with Rebirth, reading it all as it was releasing each month. So for me, it was like such a nice spot for Wally to come back and for things to come back to that status quo.
Yeah, I it makes sense. Also, keep in mind, like Wade is a prolific Flash writer, so like
Yeah.
Wade is not brushing over Flash lore with all this. So you
Right. Right.
know, so yeah, I mean, it kind of goes through all the events. It stops by Dark Knight Metal, which I hate, which I'm assuming Mark Wade hates. I feel like Mark Wade's taste might be my taste. Like,
I think so. I think Mark Wade might be the kind of guy that likes a little bit of like death metal, but specifically the looniness of it. Like, because that's the element of Scott Snyder for me, where I'm like, man, there's so much going on here. Like, it's the way I feel about the Justice League run too, where I'm like,
Yeah.
there's parts of this I can get behind, but
Yeah.
I have to think of it in a certain way. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's where Scott Snyder gets the most like Morrison, where it's like, but even the idea of like calling it death metal, Dark Knight metal, where there's like Superman with a guitar, which is cool as a piece of artwork that you would put up on your wall, but I don't know whether I need it in continuity as a story element. It doesn't like it's Scott Snyder will do Superman with a guitar, and then Morrison will do Superman with a wishing piano. You know that wish
Yeah.
machine piano thing, and it's like,
Right.
what? What is up with these writers creating
Yeah.
like Superman with some instrument that has otherworldly power?
Yeah, and then it's like with Morrison, it's like here's the idea that Joker is this larger than life idea, and then with Scott Snyder, it's like maybe he's immortal, and also here's these dragon versions of him in the dark multiverse. What does that mean? It resembles absolute Joker a little bit. It's like these really interesting parallels of just wooniness in different ways, where it's like Morrison is almost this like really, really the silliness of comic books, and then Scott Snyder's the like extreme silly cool factor times 1,000. It's like one's the funniness of it, one's the oh this is so cool aspect, you know?
Yeah, I'm trying to make sense of their approaches to it. I might need more time to like work through. Huh.
Yeah,
I've never thought of Scott Snyder and Grant Morrison as similar. They are similar but different. So I'm trying to figure that out. So
they are.
this issue just I mean it goes through a bunch of events, sure. Something that I thought that you would like cuz you like what was the name of this Justice League Odyssey? Was it Odyssey?
Yes, yeah, they give a mention of Justice League Odyssey here.
That's the space team, right? So they mention on one page that
Correct.
there's three Justice League teams at a certain time. There's the Odyssey team, there's the regular team, and then there's the Dark team, right?
Yeah, yeah, because that was during like the 2018 like new issue one of Justice League where it was Scott Snyder on that, and it was like Ran V on Justice League Dark. I think it was Ran V, right? I think so. Yeah, and then you had Justice League Odyssey as well, which was like
Or was it Tinian?
Cyborg. Yeah, I think it was Tiny. I think you might be right. Yeah, I
I'll
don't know
look it
why I
up.
thought Ran V. Yeah, it might be Tiny now that I'm thinking about it
Tinian
because it
and
was
Ram V do very similar work in the sense that they're
yes.
kind of dark and fun,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, 100%. Because that was Swamp Thing, a little bit of Doctor Fate, and all of them. But I love the mention to Justice League Odyssey because that is a team where I've always felt that DC's at their best when they embrace their teams. It's why I loved the creation of the Terrifics. I thought that was an awesome idea.
Yeah.
I loved obviously the idea of Justice League Dark, any emphasis on the Suicide Squad, right? So having the emphasis on another Justice League team that wasn't just like oh, Justice League Europe, Justice League International, which are good teams, but generally like a revolving door of general Justice League members. I like when there's sort of a core theme going on, right? Like a very specific theme. And that's what you get out of Justice League Dark. That's what you get out of Odyssey too, even though it was short lived.
Yeah. There's so many pages to this, but like it I mean it essentially does go through all this stuff. It goes through I think the biggest thing, flipping forward a couple pages, we deal with the return of Flashpoint Batman, which is Thomas Wayne. Then we
Mhm.
have Eobard Thawne, but then we have Dr. Manhattan. So they do bring. I was wondering if they were going to strike that from existence, which the idea of don't use Watchmen characters, but no, they do. Dr.
Yeah.
Manhattan, a traveler from an alternate universe, powerful entity, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, that was an interesting one to me because I had a feeling they would make it canon just because a lot of Doomsday Clock, just on a loose level, feels like it is not necessarily implied to be canon all the time, but it's treated in a way where it feels like the conclusion of that is like it feels like the idea that there's still these unstable things and that he's the cause of it, right? Like that was the first kind of moment of like, hey, something about the new 52 being created was deliberate. It was specific, right? It was somebody came in and interfered beyond just burying Flashpoint, right? Like,
Yeah.
so to continue to elevate that and be like, oh yeah, we are addressing to you that we realize that was a mistake. It makes sense for them to also include, you know, all the information more about Dr. Manhattan in relation to that. I have a feeling they don't want to touch Watchmen too hard, but specifically Manhattan, they're like, that's the one we got to at least sprinkle in just because of the context.
Yeah. I mean, and they do mention that when Dr. Manhattan leaves, that's what kind of makes the final changes to the universe that brings the Justice Society back into history. There's a lot of things I was surprised they don't bring up in this. They don't bring up the events of Flashpoint Beyond. They don't bring
Yeah.
up the lost children.
It's interesting too because we talked before about how a lot of this book and just in general these issues has been creating a foundation for you to assume things yourself, right? Since not everything can be included. And I think the way that I look at this is especially in the way that they mention Perpetua and they mention the hand, right? In the first issue, they treat it entirely like the hands are an important aspect of like what I assume to be the presence and what creates DC, right? Perpetua is one of these hands.
Yeah.
They kind of treat Dr. Manhattan as if the goal of like changes to the universe and timeline include him, right? Because then they talk about all the changes he makes and the final changes he makes before he leaves. And then they bring up when Wonder Woman talks to the hands during Death Metal, they bring up the inclusion of they almost imply that like they finished what Dr. Manhattan was already kind of starting, it seems
Mm.
to be like as if like he was already fixing pieces he screwed up, and now Wonder Woman talking to them is the final piece of like now everything's canon. Because after that was, oh, we live in an omniverse now, everything's canon, everything's connected. So it's almost like Wade's officially declaring that is like that's the moment it all came back into picture. This is when everything became a streamlined thing, a streamlined universe.
I yeah, I'm trying to like figure out like what makes sense in here because I don't know if you noticed. So yeah, we do go through Alfred Pennyworth's death and all that stuff. But then when they say
Mm-hmm.
that Jonathan Kent comes back, he's been gone for less than a month, but he comes back, and they word it in this way. I didn't know this was DC continuity and how they're dealing with this. They say he was under the care of a time traveler purporting to be John's grandfather, Jor-El.
Interesting.
Did you read that
Yeah,
part?
I think I glossed over, but I didn't think about it enough to like that is interesting phrasing. That's
They're retconning the retcon. So when Brian
yeah.
Michael Bendis was writing it, he said that Jor-El essentially plucked out of time right after he sends Kal-El to Earth, but before Krypton explodes, he goes lives like a full ass life.
Yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
comes back to the point of his death and then dies. And it's the funniest thing when you think about it. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't bring your wife or anything. You went gallivanting and you just came back and you're like, whatever. But
Yeah.
like, and we were meant to believe, for the most part, we were meant to believe that like that is Jor-El. And then
Hmm.
in this, and I don't know whether they touched on it in another series before, but I think there was something recently that they brought up Jor-El. Yeah, it was in the recent Superman issue last
Okay.
week where they brought up Jor-El and they mentioned that like I got to meet like Lois is saying like I got to meet Jor-El. And in
Yeah.
this they're saying it's a time traveler who may or may not be Jor-El.
That's super interesting too, because is that a seed for the future of like what I like? Is that going to be part of like Joshua Williamson revealing that that's not Jor-El? Like, is that supposed to be something they're going to talk about later, or is that just like a maybe it is, maybe it's not? Don't ask questions. Like, are we just leaving it at that, or is that a like? Because I mean, this is like at least pieces of the future, right? They're kind of setting things up, so I wonder if that is supposed to be a setup for a future reveal. I don't know.
I don't know. All I know is like Jor-El had a name, right? Mr. Oz or whatever.
Yeah, Mr. Oz.
And that was supposed to make us think it was Ozymandias at the time of Doomsday Clock, but it
Right.
wasn't, and it was Jor-El. Wouldn't it be funny as if that was the big reveal at the end of Hush 2? for no good reason. Just for some reason, Hush 2 ends with, oh yeah, it was a time traveler being Jor-El. And
Yeah.
that's what we've been waiting on this whole time, and now it's delayed.
Hey, that could work for me. You know, at this point.
It's like, fine, just release it, dude. Come
Oh
on.
my god, I know.
Release it. I'm blaming Jeff Loeb, but it might be Jim Lee's fault. I don't know.
You know what? Maybe honestly, it's one of those things where it's just like it's gone on for so long that I almost forget about it every now and then, and
And
it's
we
like
don't
it's
need
a
it. We don't need it
yeah,
back.
it's a problem when I've forgotten about it, remembered, forgotten again, remembered, and forgotten and remembered again. Like I just keep remembering once in a while that that's still delayed and it still hasn't concluded. Like I'd like to think that I can ignore it for a little bit and go, "Oh, it's out now. I'll go read that, I guess." But we're still here. We're still here waiting, and we're already at Fraction Batman. We're already past that. It's like, for what reason would I be anticipating this anymore?
Did you ever read the last days of Lex Luthor or whatever? The last like
Yes,
and
yes,
it took 3 years or whatever to come out. Like
yeah.
they released issue one, and then like I read issue one, and then 2 years later I was like, oh, issues two's coming out. It's been like 6 months, right? And I was like, no, it's been
Yeah.
2 years. Like,
Oh my God. It's exactly that where it's just at a point. Oh my God. You can't blame people for completely forgetting.
there have been comic runs that not just get canceled, they just get delayed to the point of they're never coming back. Like
Yeah.
they I think
I'm
there's a Kevin Smith Black Cat one that like ended. It didn't even end. It just didn't have the next issue.
interesting. Wasn't that the case a little bit with Doomsday Clock when it was coming out at the same time as well? Like, wasn't that kind of delayed a
It
decent
was
amount to
delayed
the
a
point that
lot.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and even just, I don't remember how much this was delayed, but like, was it Jeff John's JSA stuff too? Wasn't that like recently kind of delayed?
I don't know if that was delayed.
Or was it the, Lost Children? Was it that? Am I thinking of? It was something he was doing that was just taking a while. It was
Yeah.
taking a while to come out.
Yeah. It might have been, but that's a whole different can of worms. Supposedly
Yeah.
the new Golden Age stuff was supposed to be like this big like initiative, and Disney DC was like, "Oh no, we're not going to do all that."
I would have just let him go all in. For me, at least, when Jeff Johns comes in with a big idea for some big lore thing, he's the kind of guy where, like, yeah, maybe I don't love all of his ideas, but if he's coming in with a big game plan like that, I do trust him. I do trust him a good bit, and especially when it comes to the JSA and it comes to like Stargirl stuff, I really do trust him. Like, if he's coming in with something, he's probably thought quite a bit about it.
You know that not only did he create Stargirl's based off of his late
Yeah,
sister.
his late sister. Yeah, so that's why that character is so unbelievably important to him. That's the kind of thing where it's like, if I'm trusting anyone with making sure that that makes sense and that that's going to be well written, I'm gonna trust him.
That's why I still stick by the Stargirl TV show was good.
It is good. It really was good. I like. I remember when I watched it for the first time, and I felt that like the people talked about it as like wire fu, where like the fights are like really excessive. But I'm like, that's really fun though. Like that's
Yeah.
okay. That's a good thing. Like not everything has to be realistic brute force fights. I love the way they portrayed the fights in it. It was so excessive and it was so fun that it came across so comic booky. It didn't feel the need to like introduce everything slowly one by one. They immediately introduce you to the JSA. They immediately introduce you to these fun costumes and all the powers and all the characters. Like I loved it. I thought they did a great job of Stargirl.
The fact like Sportsmaster and Tigress are like a mom and dad in the
Yeah,
town, like, is such a
yeah,
funny concept to me, that like
yeah,
Sportsmaster owns a gym and he's like a gym bro. But
yeah.
like, dude, I was sad when they died. I was so sad. I was
Me
like,
too.
they were
They
they
were.
were
They,
bad guys, but still.
Yeah, they were great. And they also had some of the coolest, most fun like fight choreography, especially the way they used Sportsmaster. I thought that was so fun. Like him versus Hourman. I knew a guy who was friends with some of the people that did stunts on Stargirl, and he just talked about how much of a blast they had just like throwing people around, spending days and days coming up with funny like fight ideas and stuff he can do, throwing around baseballs and basketballs and stuff.
Yeah. I think it's funny that the main villain's plot of the first season is make America great again.
Yeah,
in a
basically
weird
it
way.
is.
We're like, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah,
Um,
ice powers. Yeah,
yeah. Oh,
yeah, give them ice
ice.
powers. Yeah, give them
Yeah,
ice powers.
I
So
didn't
kind of
think of
works.
ice.
Yeah, it kind of works. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought the Jor-El thing was kind of funny. And then they kind of like, again, this issue was just like they're telling us scenes. Then yeah, Wonder Woman talks to Perpetua or whatever, or like Perpetua shows up. Wonder Woman. I hate this, by the way. I hate the idea of there's crisis energy and there's anti-crisis energy. And it's like, come on, man. That's like I sit down to eat a slice of pizza, and then you are over there in the corner with anti-pizza, and like suddenly
Yeah.
like I don't have any pizza. Like,
Yeah, the crisis energy thing for me was really silly. That was when I was little, like we can dial it back a little bit. I get it, but we can dial that one a little bit back. That one doesn't work the best for me.
the idea that everything has an opposite is the weirdest thing. Like, because
Yeah,
because they do it in the Flash. It's like the Speed Force, and there's the reverse Speed Force.
yeah, and it's the kind of thing where it's like to justify like a villain or parallel idea, you don't have to turn that into a energy source. That doesn't have to be the case. Like I get that it's fun to add things of like Green Lanterns, here's the bad groups, right? Or oh, for the flashes, here's reverse flash, right? Not everything needs a power source. That's the opposite of that. Like it's convoluted. It doesn't need to happen.
Like, not to mention, I mean, we went past it, but I hate. This is the type of thing I hate. The five divine metals: Electrum, Dionysium, Promethium, Nth metal, and Batmanium. Unintentionally open a door to the dark multiverse, and then they access the power of the 10th metal, and it's like, this is just a video game. This is a
Yeah.
fetch quest sort of plot.
Yeah, like at that point, that's when it's like we're getting a little bit excessive. Like I do like certain elements of the metal stuff. I do think it gets to really fun areas. But when it's at the point where it's like I have to memorize six different types of metal, of which some of those you're never even going to mention again. Like it's just say the nth metal thing and the 10th metal if you have to. Let's leave it at that. I don't need all this other stuff.
Yeah, yeah. After this point though, like after the Perpetua stuff, like the pages of this start getting good, and it reminds me of like me really loving DC again, where it's
Yeah,
like Clown Hunter and Ghostmaker, Cassandra Cain and spoiler Stephanie as Batgirls, you know. I thought that was cool. There is one
yeah.
page though that I thought was an interesting sort of retcon, maybe.
Which
Um,
one?
they, instead of folding the Wildstorm universe into DC, they mention that they're multiversal travelers. So they mentioned that the anti-heroes, primarily the Wildcats and the Authority, who traveled the multiverse and periodically visited our Earth.
Yeah, that was a weird one because again, like we talk about, everything's deliberate, right? So if there's the need to say that these guys are time travelers or multiverse travelers, it's intentional, right? Like they could very easily just choose to say they've been on the same Earth, right? And it seems to have been the case, like with the milestone characters, it's like they've been here, right?
They've
Or
been
like
here, but then
with
they've disappeared.
yes,
I wouldn't be
exactly.
surprised if there's a DC event bringing them back into DC continuity so they can redo that again, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And like, so when you look at the contrast of how that's handled, but for this, they're multiverse travelers, that's interesting to me because I wonder why that is. Is it because there are plans in place to talk more and involve more of Milestone, but not necessarily to the same degree with Wildstorm? But then it's like, I feel like we've seen like what, like Apollo and Midnighter, they're Wildstorm, correct?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, so like they've been in DC stories quite a bit. Like they've been in them a few times now. Like I'm surprised that this wasn't a time to mold them more into this, right? Like it kind of feels like it's been something they've at least felt like they've wanted to do.
I wonder if, because in my opinion, when you're writing these characters, when you're writing these stories and these series, you have to make each thing distinct, right? So, like,
Yeah.
for example, if you gave Wally West a solo series and you gave Wallace West a solo series, you could do that, even though they're very similar in powers, as long as the story is different, like the point of each series is different, right?
Right.
Just like Superboy when he got his Man of Tomorrow, we're talking Connor Kent, he got his Man of
Yeah.
Tomorrow miniseries, and then at the same time Jonathan Kent was Superman. Like they're both quote unquote similar characters, but their stories were different. They had a different point to it, right?
Right.
Um, I feel like they're folding in Milestone because they want the characters to be like part of the universe and they're different enough that like their stories stand on their own as being different. Um, versus Wildstorm, where they're just another anti-hero team, and like
Yeah.
DC already has like many other anti-hero teams, so maybe this is an anti-hero team that are multiversal travelers.
I think that might be the case, honestly, B, because when you look at it, like you said, like I think that the way that Grifter and like Apollo and Midnighter, the way
And
that they
Zealot,
interact,
who was recently on the Birds of Prey series.
like yeah, that's right, yeah. Like all those characters, the way they interact with DC, it's a bit more like it's in these like isolated moments where it's like not really aggressively addressed as like where are you from, like it's like kind of almost treated a little bit like you've been here, right? So I guess it does fit in the mold of like you already do have in narrative DC characters that are multiversal travelers. You already have that,
Right.
so it's like they already fit so much of the mold of what main DC characters are already. Maybe treating them as another Earth and feeling like alternate characters fits a little bit better. Whereas with milestone characters, those are the ones where you're like, oh, they can just fit into this. Like Icon is way more than just a Superman clone to me. Static Shock has his own place in what he can be, right? Like maybe those characters are looked at as more of this can be a core aspect of Earth, of this prime Earth. Whereas it's like these guys, they can pop in for a story. Maybe there's like someone falls onto the earth and they talk to Batman, right? Like that feels like there's a different dynamic for the way of approaching those stories. One can be multiverse shenanigans. One they want bigger ambition for.
Yeah, like Milestone works the best when it's grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Like Wildcats could be wacky, like Planetary, for instance. Like the Planetary team, that's why that
Yeah.
was Wildstorm. So like the fact that like a lot of Wildstorm concepts are based around the multiverse in a way. Authority has a
Yeah.
lot of multiversal stories, as well as Planetary. Wildcats not so much, but like it's kind of like if you have a Justice League team for like Earth and having a Justice League team like Justice League Dark and Justice League Space, and like there should be a Justice League Time, like a Legends of
Yeah.
Tomorrow type team, and there should be
Yeah.
a Justice League multiversal team. But the Justice League
Yeah.
multiversal team is a different like flavor than the Wildcats, which could be a multiversal anti-hero sort of team.
Yeah, and it's different too because the Justice League Incarnate, I think it is, which is the multiverse team. Yeah, I think Incarnate.
Yeah.
They are a team that generally is like still multiversal elements of DC characters, right?
Yeah.
Whereas it's like you try to bring someone like Wildstorm into the mix, it is like a different brand. Like it is a different group. Like it's not the same as like here's a different version of Superman. It's like no, Apollo and Midnighter, they are individual characters. So I do like the idea of like treating them a bit more as like actual multiversal characters. Because like I said, like a lot of the times multiversal characters will end up just being what if alternate versions of different DC characters that already exist. Folding in characters that you used to not really have into the mix, like Wildstorm characters, and being like, yeah, we're talking about multiverse. These guys actually are a whole different thing. It embraces that multiverse aspect a bit more in a way I like. It isn't just different DC stuff, it's different like whole brands. It's like Wildstorm and everyone to do with that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Milestone, the newest reboot of Milestone, cements itself as a different universe in the multiverse of DC to the point where they do make references to DC properties that don't exist in Milestone. So they mentioned that there was an alien baby that landed and the government killed him. So that's Clark Kent. That's
Yeah.
Kal-El, right? They mention the Martian Manhunter, but it's a different type of Martian Manhunter, but they call him Martian Manhunter. They also mention like an Amazon, like Amazons, I think. And like,
Right.
but it's not. So, but then with the way this is going, it doesn't seem like that is in continuity anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Like we said, it's very deliberate in the way that the choice of either making things multiversal or making them a retcon, like that's all very deliberate. The way that Wallace has been treated, the way that this has been changed. So I'm curious. I assume to myself that this has to be a buildup of Milestone being important to the main DC universe.
I wish they would and actually like put some put some like energy behind it. You know, like even if you
Yeah,
just have a static shock, like I know his name is Static, but like a static shock, call it Static Shock. Static
yeah,
Shock comic series where Static is being reintroduced to this world of heroes that he used to know and now he doesn't, and things are a little bit different.
yeah,
And just have that the only one milestone comic for now, and then throw in Icon, who let's see a real good build up to this weird alien character that is like a conservative. That shouldn't be his only thing, but like,
yeah.
you know, the fact he's an intergalactic lawyer, throw him in some cosmic adventures. Like,
Yeah, of
I don't think
course.
Icon needs to be on Earth at all. Like,
No, not at all. In fact, I've constantly said I think DC needs to embrace their cosmic side more because Marvel has such an awesome cosmic side, and I think DC can rival that, but they need to dig into their treasure chest and pull everything out. Like everything's there, they just haven't really embraced it. Ram V does some stuff here and there where it's like, oh, the New Gods, the Lanterns involvement, and you're like, that's really cool. We just need more, and I think Icon could easily join that kind of cosmic space and handle stuff there.
yeah. The last couple pages of this are really just going through the like events that we know from Dark Crisis. Nothing really new. They bring up the Devil Neza. They bring up the Necro Star. They bring up Absolute Power. Justice League Unlimited comes in, and then um um the death of Darkseid, and then we get little silhouettes of the absolute DC characters. But what I find funny is that they don't say absolute. They say to what ultimate end we do not yet know, though I suspect we soon will.
Yeah.
This is not ultimate. This is absolute, man.
Yeah, I mean, like for the one word that you've got to use to like brand these guys, you use the whole other one. But all
Use
right,
the ultimate. Did Mark Wade got confused? He's like, wait, which one are we?
yeah.
Are we ultimate or absolute?
It's like whatever. I'll pick one. Yeah,
Fine. He's like a 50-50 shot and he picks wrong.
exactly. So like
Like,
whatever. I guess
he could have just
take your
worked the
shot.
word absolute into there, but nope, he didn't. Um,
Yeah,
then we get like a splash page where Batman's like, after the events of Hush again,
yeah.
things will never be the same, and it's like, well, we've already gotten past that, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if that's the case because I haven't read it. Like
Well,
I don't know.
what has changed? Because we know what Red Hood's up to, we know what Tim Drake's up to, we know what Joker's up to because of DCKO. Is
Yeah,
Barbara Gordon's in Birds of Prey? So unless we say
yeah.
Birds of Prey takes place before DC or before Batman Hush 2, like who's the only person who didn't get affected?
It
Commissioner
almost it,
Gordon and Barbara Gordon?
it almost feels like they know that nothing really changes, but there feels the need to be like an explanation for what happened prior to this new era of Batman to be like, well, after the events of Hush, and it's like, well, after what events?
What events?
Nothing's changed.
The
Yeah, I mean,
Jor-El
nothing's really
pops
changed.
in.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's the case, but it's just kind of keeping it like it's like it felt like a weird necessity to mention it when it's like that really hasn't affected anything. But sure, if it's important, I guess, but it doesn't really feel important.
Yeah. I mean, the splash page brings up like Superman Unlimited getting a new power, like in the pages of Superman Unlimited.
Yeah,
And then it leads up to DCKO where he says Darkseid reappeared in his most unbeatable form yet, King Omega. As of writing, all we know is that Earth's heroes will face their greatest struggle if they are to defeat him. And
yeah,
so at writing this, Barry Allen has not figured out the events Also, I don't think Barry Allen's involved with DCKO.
No, I don't think
Wally
he
isn't even.
is.
He's not even a champion. Jay Garrick is a champion.
Yeah, it's interesting because like there's so many characters that are like not included, but like included on the outskirts of what's happening. So I'm very curious to see how that unfolds, especially because Barry, like you said, is the one that is not involved with this. So he really is talking as an outsider to this event. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which it's such an interesting handling of everything because this does feel like such a massive event while also simultaneously leaving certain people out. But it's not like they don't have anything to do. It's just like they're not part of this actual like tournament of sorts. It's interesting.
The final, or like one of the final pages, you see a glimpse of the future, but it doesn't say these are the events to come. But Barry says that brings us to now. Tomorrow, of course, remains unforeseen. But then he says, I'm joking. I've traveled through time. I've seen it all. But they're all like sorts of tomorrows,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So we do get glimpses of the Tornado Twins and Abracadabra and Justice League 1 million. We get a
Hmm.
glimpse of Kamandi, the what's his name? Kamandi, the
Yeah.
something boy, the last boy on Earth, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And those are deep DC lore cuts where it's like an alternate future that is kind of like Planet of the Apes. We
Right.
see Batman Beyond, obviously,
Hmm.
and we see Destiny, which is the end of the endless, right?
Right.
And like, okay, that page is cool, but it also is like you're not really hinting at anything unless some of these are new characters. I don't know.
That was the biggest thing for me as well with this issue is that for so much of this book it was emphasized that there is going to be a glimpse of the future, and it's like we got elements of that. I don't think we got things like I expected some kind of hint towards maybe future events or future little moments, like the way that like I look back at like the way Infinite Frontier was like this opening of like all these little things to come. We're just like, hey, here's what's gonna be happening. Tune in, right? I expected a little tiny bit of something like that, or just a little bit of a panel or something to allude to more things of the future. And
Yeah.
there really wasn't like any of that. For as much as they kind of hyped that up to be the case, that was one area where I was like, oh, I expected a lot more of that.
Yeah, I think they were just like, hey, let's not shoot ourselves in the foot. Let's keep secret because like DCKO is being kept under wraps, and like
Yeah,
absolute DC stuff also under wraps. So it's the idea that
right.
like maybe they're like, hey, look, we're already in the lead. Um, Somebody showed market share percentages of DC Comics versus Marvel Comics, and Marvel Comics is beating them by like 5%. But Marvel Comics also
Yeah.
produces twice as many comics as DC, and they're only like 5% ahead of DC. Like DC is outselling Marvel by the series, right?
Oh yeah.
Excuse me, per series.
Yeah.
So like DC is essentially in the lead when it comes to stuff right now, and they're like, look, we don't need to like run backwards to gloat. Like let's just stay
Yeah,
steady,
right. And it's interesting too because, like you said, like all these things are being kept under wraps, absolute stuff, right? And everything to do with DCKO. And it really does seem like, as vague as it is and how little we know, there seems to be an implication that like there is going to be big aftermath to this all. Like it isn't just going to be like these past couple of events of like absolute power and stuff. They've had aftermath, but it's like aftermath I don't really care that much about. That really only means a little bit to like the next couple of like issues of certain series. Like it's not that kind of big. This feels like there's a status quo difference that might change a bit, or new introductions to new things. Like it feels like there's a buildup of like Scott Snyder really treating this as like, hey, I am clearly putting all of this emphasis into the absolute universe. There's this big emphasis on Darkseid and what he has to do with everything. There really is going to be an interesting aftermath to all of this. And I'm
Yeah.
really curious to what that will be. But like you said, we really don't know anything. Like it really feels as vague as it can be right now in terms of what the future of the absolute universe is, what the aftermath of DCKO will be. Like I truly, really don't know. So maybe they want to keep it as much of that as they can.
And I'm okay with it. Like I'm gonna be honest,
Yeah.
like I believe in DC. Like
Yeah, me too.
again, I'm not a, like, I will always love DC, even through its bad periods that we've talked about. I didn't trust them back then, though. Like, I will always love them as a family member, making bad
Yeah.
decisions. But right now, like, they've really turned their life around.
I think so, honestly. And especially with all of this, like I think Scott Snyder's found like a very good balance in the way that he's handling the absolute universe and this event and everything. Like even down to just like I've said it before, I'm not a big tournament person, but this story still grips me because I love the way they're handling it. It feels so comic booky. It feels so grand, right? And it doesn't feel grand and comic booky in this way that I think Dark Knight's Metal and Death Metal were, where it was like really excessive, really loony to a point where it was like there's these weird power scaling implications to things where it's like, all right, is this a comic book or is this just for power scalers, right? Like,
Right.
it's fun, but like, all right, this feels like a genuine attempt at like a cool story that will actually build to something interesting while letting the other universe flourish and build and come to something interesting. And now all the new titles that are coming soon, like it really does feel like a proper foundation that is very beautifully being built on.
I love it. I love it. Also,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm not a big tournament person, um, because it's about the story to me.
Yeah.
So, because in real life, anyone could, like, there is a non-zero chance that you could lose a fight against a baby. Like,
Yeah.
you could slip and fall on your way to, you're going to literally kill a baby, and you slip
Yeah.
on something, you hit your head, and you die, and the baby wins that round. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Exactly.
The baby
Yeah.
moves up in the bracket.
Yeah.
Like,
Or there's like those storylines where the tournament has very tight gimmicks to it where it's like, oh, if you fall off, technically you're out. Or if you cross this line, you get out. And it's like, okay, well, now it's not really about who's strongest. It's about who's going to be smart enough to like get past this gimmick or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, I get it, but I'm not really into this. It's
it's like
not
Squid
really
Game, though. Did you like Squid Game?
to a degree, but you're right. I think that's a good comparison for it, honestly.
Like, Squid Game would always have, like, some big macho guy being like, stick with me, I'll keep you safe in exchange
Yeah.
for part of your cookie. Like, there'll be like things.
Yeah.
And then that guy will, like, be too heavy for the seesaw and then
Yeah.
fall into a pit of spikes. Like,
Exactly.
By the way,
Yeah.
that didn't happen, but the American Squid Game, feel free to take it. Feel free to take
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
a seesaw over spikes. I'll give
Yeah.
that to you.
Yeah. But take that idea for free. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm more interested with DCKO. The idea that, because I was very surprised by this twist, is that everybody will die. And it's the
Yeah.
goal of the final person to bring everybody back to life.
Yeah. That's
like Shazam, Billy Batson just gets, like, squashed.
yeah. Like that's the really interesting aspect to me is it's just like I really do wonder because like part of me wonders, is this really going to be the thing where it's like the conclusion's pretty obvious and you think it's not going to be obvious, but it is, and
It's
it's like
not Superman.
yeah,
Do you know
right. Like it's
why?
like
Do you know why I think
why
it's not
is
Superman? Because Superman won't kill. And I don't think, even though Superman knows that if he wins, if he blitzes everybody and he wins, that he'd redo time, Superman, it would be a horrible injustice to the character of Superman to kill and then go back in time to undo his kills. He would
right.
still view the idea of killing as bad. He wouldn't do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And especially because if that's the case, it really does open up the doors to be like, all right, it's probably not going to be Batman. It's probably not going to be
Well, it can't be
Superman.
Batman. Batman's
Yeah,
dead.
can't. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, who is it going to be then? Like, what is the flagship character you can imagine that has that confrontation with Darkseid and with these things? Like, that's so interesting to me.
I wouldn't be surprised. There's a couple of ways they could do it that just really work. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, there could be a, like, whatever the opposite of a heel turn is. If a villain gets the power and they essentially get, like, universal empathy maybe from it, and then they
Yeah,
fix things and they give up the power.
that could be really interesting.
Can you
That would,
imagine? Can you imagine if Lex Luthor, because he's supposed to be good, right? Like, but then he's bad again. If he
yeah,
gets universal empathy, he gives up the power, but then by giving up the power, doesn't realize why he gave up the power to begin with because he doesn't have that empathy anymore. So then he is constantly being like, I had this power, and for some reason I gave it away. I need that power again.
Yeah.
And it becomes this almost like empty part of his like soul where he's like, I need to
That'd
keep
be
going for that.
that would be really, really interesting. And that feels like something Scott Snyder would do. That feels
You're
in the
saying
realm
that
of
that's
the
something
way.
I would do. I just came up with
Yeah,
it.
you're thinking like Scott Snyder now.
Like it would be cool. Like I envision, because it's been so far so good in that first issue and some of the tie-ins and stuff. Like there's gonna be twists like that. It's gonna be like, what if Lobo was a good guy or something? Like Lobo wins, or I'm sure there are going to be matchups where it's not just 1v1. I don't think it's going to be 1v. I think there's going to be Death Trap. I think it's going to be Squid Game. I think it's going to be, there are certain levels of the bracket formation where they're like competing against each other, but they're not just killing each other. They're just like going through something, some sort of test.
I think Scott Snyder said that not every situation is a 1v1. Like it gets messy, like it gets complicated. So I'm really curious to see how that unfolds. And just some of these matchups too. Like Jay Garrick versus Guy Gardner is like really weird and really interesting. And like that's an interesting one to me. I think I saw I think it was one of the covers and it's like Guy with like a sword and it's like Jay Garrick with like a lightning bolt. Like it was something like that.
I
Like
heard
it's
they get
really
access to
interesting.
weapons and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting. I'm very curious to see how that plays out.
Have you read JLA Avengers?
I have not. I have not. I
Check it
know.
out, man. Like,
I know. That's a crime. I know.
so JLA Avengers starts off with both of the groups of heroes, the Justice League and the Avengers, switching universes, and then there's a game between the Grandmaster and somebody else where they're collecting the cosmic artifacts of each universe. So they collect the Infinity Gauntlet, the Cosmic Cube, but then they also collect like the DC stuff, like I don't know, the Book of Destiny or
Oh,
whatever.
I,
Like I
I
don't know.
think I've seen some of the panels
But
of
then
it.
they
Yes.
merge
Yeah.
universes, not in an amalgam way, but in a shared universe way, and then they split up. So
Right.
like I don't know what this is gonna hold, but I'm excited for DCKO.
Yeah.
And
It's a nice vagueness to everything that makes me excited while truly giving me like not a lot to go off of. And it really is just like predictions out in the Wild West. Like it really is just I don't think anyone can really properly guess what's gonna happen here. It's just so open to anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um as we close this episode, let's talk about this final page, because I think there's a couple things about this final page where Barry
Mhm.
Allen, stops writing his memoir, at least as far as we see. He clicks off his computer and he goes to the comic shop and he grabs a comic and he runs out. Did you notice anything? Because I have a theory.
I didn't notice anything in particular. What's your theory here?
I think that Barry Allen's like little man cave of sorts, where he has all those artifacts and stuff, I think that's our universe. I think it's the
Interesting.
real world,
Let
because he goes to the comic shop, and the comic shop's called Asteroid Comics, which means nothing, except for the final panel. But in the window of Asteroid Comics, there's a comic poster of Action Comics, the first one with Superman, um,
yeah.
and then there's somebody grabbing a comic off the stand, which is Crisis on Infinite Earths, and to me, there's sometimes there's DC stories where they mention that like DC Comics as a company takes place in DC Comics, and that
Yeah.
they produce stories based on the exploits of heroes. Sometimes they're real and sometimes they're not. This does not read to me as that. This reads to me as like, this is our world, because like the events of Action Comics, why would a poster be up in the window if it's now? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. So
Yeah.
I view
That's
this as he's living in our world.
yeah. And it makes sense too with the way they're trying to portray Barry Allen at this point in time, which is he is this multiversal guy. He's learning everything there is, right? This is his whole shtick now, right? For him to be doing that on our Earth, like in our world, makes so much sense. Like that makes sense for someone who is so knowledgeable about the multiverse and is continuously becoming more knowledgeable. For him to be doing that from our Earth and for it to end there fits well beyond just a here's a little meta thing. Like that makes sense for him. That makes sense for him to be there. I think that might be the case, honestly.
Which in the real world continuity, there's a house somewhere with like the helmet of fate and like a
Yeah, yeah.
cosmic rod and like all those
Yeah.
artifacts. It's somewhere on this earth, and it's like, oh,
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
all right. I
Yeah.
mean, the final panel is, and I think they were trying like, is the D in asteroid and the C in comics becomes DC in the panel, and
Yeah.
like cute, but like not necessary, but cute, you know. All right,
Yeah.
but I think the bigger thing is that his man cave, and is he's essentially retired to our Earth. That's what I
Yes,
got by the end
exactly.
of it.
Yeah, and it's nice for a guy that is learning all these DC pieces, right? To be in the most meta place possible while doing that, right?
Right.
Like, especially like we talked about, where is he coming from, perspective wise, with everything he's reading and writing, right? Like some of these events he wasn't a part of. It's like, well, you see in the real life where these comics are written as he talks about it, right? So that's an
Yeah.
interesting area for him to be doing this in. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And keep in mind, Superboy Prime, who is also from our Earth,
Yeah.
Superboy Prime is also currently in the Superman comics.
Yeah, that's right.
Breaking the fourth wall, understanding he's in a comic book.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. That's a very interesting thing to think about Barry and his relationship to our world, which interesting, interesting. There's some meta stuff there that I hope that they explore a little bit because that seems very enticing. I'm very curious.
I hope they don't explore it. I hope it's just a fun little because
I should
the
I should rephrase. I hope they like expand on it in still a vague way. Like
yeah,
still in a like we're not gonna touch it, but hey, we're implying here.
right, right. It's it's fun and whatever. And like Superboy Prime comes from that like our Earth, and
Yeah.
he's currently hopping universes due to DCKO and all that stuff and Darkseid's Legion. By the way, I wanted to mention in that glimpse of the future, unless the three silhouetted people are Legionnaires, they don't show the Legion of Superheroes at all in these possible
Yeah.
futures.
Yeah, that was interesting that they didn't make an emphasis on that. That was one of the areas where I was a little bit surprised that that wasn't made more as a focus. I wonder why that might be. Maybe the silhouettes are supposed to be them. I don't know.
Aren't they relaunching? Aren't they relaunching Legion written by Joshua Williamson or something?
They are. They talked about that, did they not? Like a while
At
ago.
at NYCC they mentioned it.
Yes, yeah, they did.
All the new series
Uh
that come out with DC Next Level. I think that's what comes out next. Whatever is post
yeah.
DCKO, I think it's Next Level and like stuff like that. So, I mean, we're dealing with Legion, Barbara Gordon Breakout, which I don't know what
Fire
that means.
Firestorm, a new Firestorm series, which I'm unbelievably excited for. That's really interesting.
I'm trying to bring up my list of stuff, but yeah, like DC, Zatanna, Batwoman. These are all like the DC Next Level books are Batwoman, Zatanna, Legion of Superheroes. Um, that starts off in March. The classic
Yeah.
Legion returns after the Brian Bendis run and after the Absolute Legion storyline. Mark Waid gave his blessing for Williamson's new take. And it's part of the thing. Lobo gets a new series. Deathstroke, the Terminator, Firestorm, Batman, Shadow of the Bat, the Demon, and Barbara Gordon Breakout. I wouldn't be surprised if Next Level has to deal with the ramifications of DCKO. But what
I
does
think
that mean?
so.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do feel like a lot of those titles feel like they're a little bit individual, right? Like Firestorm feels like that's probably, if I have to assume, that feels like it's probably going to be like kind of hard launching it as like, all right, here's what I assume to be probably like Ronnie Raymond
Yeah.
doing fun stuff, fun adventures, stuff like that. And then it's like Deathstroke. Apparently, I from what it sounds like, they want it to be like a classic back to form assassin's world. Like they
Okay.
want it to be treat Deathstroke as an assassin, cool assassin, kind of the way Christopher Priest did it. I those feel very isolated and individual. So it's like I wonder, is this just like building and building with new titles and more and more and more to really build out this DC universe as we go forward post like DCKO? I'm not really sure. It's interesting. I truly don't know.
I just realized I don't think Batman dies at the end of DCKO, but what if he retires?
He could. I just wonder how do you handle the end of that?
There are
Like,
3 next level books: Barbara Gordon Breakout, which I don't know what that means, prison breakout or breaking out on her own. She's already on her
yeah,
own. So what does that
right,
mean? There's Batwoman, and then there's Batman Shadow of the Bat.
right. That's the thing. I'm not 100% sure because obviously there's still like the little pieces of like what Jace Fox Batman can be, right? Like he's the Batman of New York, right? Like you have that. Like there's elements of the fact of like what Batgirl does on her own. So it's like maybe you retire Batman and you because I mean this is like a whole thing for Batman and DCKO. Like he is like what fighting like Dick Grayson Batman and like Jason Todd Batman
Yeah,
and all this. Like he's going through it. Like it's not just like a casual side mission. It's like a whole thing. Like it's
yeah.
like a whole thing for him. So I wonder if this is treated as that kind of farewell retirement moment in a soft way, the way that Barry Allen have like a soft retirement of like, yeah, I'm done. I'm kind of done now. Maybe it's that.
There are certain spin-offs. I don't want to take up all your time, and also like this podcast episode, if we get off too off topic, then it's like, well, what's the point of it? But
Yeah.
um there's that one shot of DCKO coming out called the Kids Are All Fight,
Mhm.
and that has Cassandra Cain, Mr. Terrific's kid, Leon Harper, Jonathan Kent, and Jay Garrick's daughter, and I think that's it. But the point being is, are they doing? They must have plans for these characters. Again,
Yeah.
you know how like people who are big Taylor Swift fans, they believe in Taylor Swift so much that everything Taylor Swift does must have a point, which means everything she
Yeah.
says not only has a point but has like a subtext to it, and then it's a
Right.
code for something. So for me, because as of right now, I'm believing in DC so much, I'm like, they have a plan for everything, don't they?
Yeah, and just the way, like, because I listen into everything Scott Snyder talks about and stuff. The way that he talks about these things, there's clearly a lot of thought and planning put into all of this in regards to the absolute stuff. The way that he handles DCKO, like it's not just like oh, we did this for fun. There's a lot of elements of what he's doing where he's like, oh, I don't want to say anything about what you just asked me there because you're gonna see on that one. And it's like, well, that doesn't feel like something you need to be secretive about, but it's like clearly they have plans that they don't want to say just yet, or certain elements of things where they're like, hey, you put the pieces together. I don't want to say too much. So it's like they are being in a way that feels like someone who has a big plan.
There Yeah, it's very much like, I can't tell.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, all right, if you say so, I'll keep theorizing.
The fact is that Mark Waid, although Mark Waid's not directly on DCKO, he's doing some of the tie-ins and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
they have some pretty big minds on this that
Yeah.
I'm just, and like, supposedly Absolute DC Universe won't be necessarily touched by DCKO. Like, the characters won't cross over yet. So,
Mhm.
okay, they've hinted at it, but they're not going to. And then we're getting like weird Homelander, Sub-Zero, or Scorpion, or whoever, like crossovers,
Yeah.
like it's some
Which
sort
is
of DLC content.
which is really interesting because it doesn't seem like they're treating it like a funny Fortnite crossover. Like they're treating it like it's actually part of this big event, which is interesting. It's
Annabelle,
very
I
interesting.
think, is there.
Yeah, it's like okay, we'll see how that is handled. Interesting.
But again, like we say, like, I guess we'll see, but it's more like, oh shit, we're gonna see. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe in DC's direction so much now that I'm like, not only like I guess we'll see, but like, oh, we're gonna see. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, I trust the process. Like I trust the way that they handle these things. Like the way they're all talking about it just leads me to continuously believe I'm like, oh, you're thinking about this. You have a plan. Like I like the way you're phrasing this, right? Like it doesn't feel like, oh, I don't really get what's going on here. It feels like, oh, you're gonna tell me. You'll tell me, and I'm gonna understand this at some point.
All in due time, you know. I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm excited. Not only do I have, you know, a little bit more of DC continuity that I understand because of this miniseries, but like a lot of stuff that DC has to come. Um, I'm super stoked, man. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited. And I think that this is a great build up to what is to come.
Yeah, yeah. Jack, I want to thank you so much for coming on this show and talking about New History of the DC Universe, issue number 4, as well as, you know, all the other DC stuff that we were talking about. Luckily for you, like, sure, we're done with this episode, but I'm going to have you on Comic Talk on Thursdays. So it's always a pleasure to have you on this show. Where can we find you? What do you got coming up? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can find me, The Film Field, on YouTube and TikTok. Got some more videos coming up as well. Then we talking a lot more about Green Lantern stuff, a lot of interesting things going on there. So be on the lookout for videos of that sort and just general DC content.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Jack. Thank you to anybody out there who is watching and or listening. If you were watching us live, you're watching us on youtube.com/the Keeg Show, or maybe you're watching the YouTube channel after the fact, you know, in a video, or maybe you're listening to the podcast wherever you get your podcast from: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, etc., etc. We're on all those platforms. Pick your poison. If you're on social media, follow the Keeg at the Keeg Show on TikTok and Instagram. Those are our two biggest ones. We're also on Blue Sky and Threads and all that. At the Keeg Show / the Keeg Show, wherever you can find the Keeg. We're also trying to, you know, hopefully be gearing up for new content for Patreon. So if you want to give back to the show, nothing crazy, but you know, we might be doing some inebriated podcast episodes for Patreon subscribers. So, you know, if that interests you, imagine this talk, but way more drunk. You know, maybe we do something like that and we put it on Patreon. So patreon.com/the Keeg Show, get in on the ground floor of that. We got a lot of shows that we do for the Keeg. This is the Keeg Talks, but we also have Comic Talk, which is every Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/the Keeg Show, or, you know, the podcast and whatnot, where we talk about new comic book releases. So I got Jack and Drew on this week's episode, and then who knows what November will be, but I'll have Jack again in November. And that's, yeah, we got a lot going on as we're gearing up towards the end of the year. But Jack, it's always a pleasure to have you on. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Once again, I am your host, Dimithri Pereira, and this has been another episode of the Keeg Talks. This episode, the Keeg Talks, New History of the DC Universe, issue number 4. Take care, everybody. Oh, comicshoplocator.com. Find a comic shop near you. Support local comic shops and support your local public libraries. All right, that's it. Dimithri Pereira, host of the Keeg Talks. Peace out. See you guys later.